X, Twitter, Instagram. That's more than enough social media for me. If I use one more thing, this whole thing collapses.
You're listening to Creative Rebels, the podcast for creatives. Welcome back, Rebels. So this week's guest is Elijah, and this was a really insightful chat, and I got a lot out of this. And Elijah, you might have seen his work. He's the founder of the Yellow Squares project, which just started off him drawing on an iPad, writing things that he was thinking about. I mean, I've got a list of notes in my phone, reams and reams and reams of notes, and I never do anything with them. They're just these thoughts. But I think it's similar with Elijah. He's got these thoughts, but he's put them out, and they've resonated with so many people. They're very simple. He takes a yellow square on the iPad and he writes the thought in the middle. And a lot of them sort of start debates. Some of them are questions. He's just asking people like, what do you think about this? What's your feedback on this? Which is a great way of like crowdsourcing ideas. But as soon as I saw Elijah's work, I knew that we were on a very similar like mental plane, I think. So it was fascinating to pick his brains. And my favorite square that Elijah has ever done is the title of his book, because I think it's a lot of people's favorite square. And it was the reason why I knew I had to interview him, because it's Close the App, Make the Ting. And I realized that a long time ago that I wanted make to be my word. I think it's the most important word. I think that we learn so much through making. And so when I saw that, Close the App, Make the Ting, I was just like, yes, because we're being stolen from. If you're listening to this and you've got a smartphone, then the billionaires are conspiring against us to steal our time and attention. It's why there's a proliferation of AI content at the moment. It's why your art practice is being turned into content, is to keep people on these apps. Because the longer the people are on the apps, the more advertising money that these billionaire corporations can make. So to get off the app is actually revolutionary. It is actually stealing back your time and attention. I think it's the most beautiful thing that you can do. So his core message resonated so deeply with me, Close the App, Make the Ting, that I knew that I had to get him on. I knew that you guys needed to listen to him. So open the app, the Substack app, or whatever podcast app of choice that you use, listen to this show, and then close all the other apps and just go and make some stuff. It will change your life. And enjoy this conversation with Elijah. I'm so hyped today to be joined by Elijah, who is a writer, a DJ, a music manager, and an artist. I first discovered him through his Yellow Squares project, which I'm sure we will talk about. And I feel like we all know that we need more artists and creatives and more curiosity to make the world a better place. But I think this is a person who is actively trying to make that happen. So very jazzed to be joined today by Elijah.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Welcome. So you've written a book, and by the time this airs, that book will be out. Is this your first time publishing?
This is my first book. I think I've got 3 book ideas, and this is like one of 3. It's a collection of the work I've been doing on Instagram for the last 3 years. And sometimes it feels weird calling it a book, because it is literally just a collection of those kind of notes and ideas. But it is. I ended in a book, and it will be on shelves and in stores, and I'm doing a book launch and things like that. So it is a book.
I think when we start these projects, we can never see where they're going to go. And did you, when you did your first Yellow Square, did you think it would end up in a book?
Definitely not. It was just out of kind of creative urge and necessity, and I guess using social media in a positive way. And I guess quite early on, people said, oh, you should do a book of these. And I was like, nah, it's just for Instagram, it's fine. And then eventually, I kind of, as the project escalated, for my own sake more than anything, just for me to feel like it was worth it in the end, I was like, okay, I definitely want to put these together somehow, some way. But it took a while to get there.
I think those are the best sort of projects, the ones that are made for you. And if it's made for you at the core, there's so many people in the world that you only need a tiny percentage of people that think and feel the same way that you do to find like a mass engaged following of people who are like, yeah, I've always wondered that or thought that.
Exactly. And I guess this project is about making things, and then the project became about making the thing out of making the thing, if that makes sense. So it wouldn't have made sense if I didn't do a book in the end, because I needed to show, okay, I've gone through the process of making records, books, and just see what it's like. So now, once all the dust has settled from this, I feel like I'll have a kind of insight into the publishing industry and just a way to approach it that I didn't have before.
And for anyone who hasn't seen the yellow squares that have evolved into this book, could you give a brief description of where that came from and what the yellow squares are?
Yeah, so imagine July 2021, we've been kind of in lockdown for 18 months from London. I was working as a music manager. I was wondering what the creative scenes are going to be post everyone going back outside again. All the conversations that happened, around, scene building, togetherness, equity, conversations around race that happened after the incident with George Floyd. And I was like, okay, I had actually deleted social media through a lot of that period. So I came back on with 0 followers, wanted to do something kind of just useful, like not really promoting any work that I was doing specifically. And I was thinking, okay, if you've got 0 followers, you have to just, I don't know, what do you say? And it kind of eventually began with me drawing like a kind of diagram of like the word scene in the middle, and then these kind of arrows pointing out. And that to me felt like a kind of generative word or a generative idea of what I thought an interesting scene or group of people or group of creatives would look like. And then maybe like a dead scene would be like all of those things really looking inward. And my background was like in the grime scene, or is in the grime scene in London. And I think the most interesting moments of that scene has been when there's been loads of these different kind of characters, shapes, sizes, all looking outwards and pushing things in different directions. And the times when it's been least interesting to me is when everyone's kind of infighting and saying what is and what isn't. Right? And yeah, the yellow squares kind of just became this, I guess, vessel for the way I think about work, creative, business, and just being playful, using this thing as just a bit of fun. And sometimes when people want to argue with me, I'm like, you're arguing with a smiley face emoji posting about League One football, pro wrestling, and music. Like I'm laughing on the other side of this,
Yeah, it's so mad how, like, so starting from 0, you deleted your accounts and then you came back to them, right? And you didn't realize that you were going to lose the following that you'd previously had. Is that correct?
Yeah. So, and I think this is healthy, like, because I guess at some point, obviously, you amass a following, and then there's never this kind of forcing function of starting again, especially if you've been on socials for 10 years now. Some of them, I had Twitter since 2008, Instagram maybe since 2012, and I think obviously there's a lot of dead accounts, a lot of bots and all these things. I think, it feels kind of just lighter, like there's no pressure, you're not appeasing any audience. And maybe that's like what I'll do again with another project in the future, just start from scratch.
It's so interesting because I've had this thought of deleting my own Instagram account, and I've got like over 100,000 followers on there. But I sort of think, for me, what happens in the real world is so much more important. And I spent last year making a load of art in the streets and not really posting much of it online. And although that probably has detrimental business effects for me, in terms of like creatively, I do a project where I paint strangers in the street. And so I went from trying to appeal to the largest audience possible to really making work for one individual person. And then I'd email them and say, this is where I've painted you. And that was such a joyful experience of not worrying about what an algorithm's going to think about it, not worrying about the mass market of it, and just like having these really pure interactions with the people that I'd painted. And I would love to like just delete everything to see who's really a fan, because I want my art to be well known, but I think it touches people who see it in person so much more than it touches people who see it through a screen. And so it's this thing that, like, my internal conflict of that balance of like showing up online and needing to show up online for business. Like I just got a brand deal that if I didn't have 100k followers, they probably wouldn't have
Yeah.
wanted to work with me. But at the same time, I'm like, I just want to start from scratch and see who actually gave a shit. Like who's gonna now seek me out and find that account. Because
Yeah.
they're your day ones. They're like your true, like your 1,000 true fans. They're the people.
Yeah, I think there's a difference as well. Where you're talking about, you're doing something kind of consistent, and it makes sense to amalgamate all of the people that you amassed through this project and through this idea. But then if you did something really different, if it was like, okay, I'm going to do a sculpture project based in Cornwall out of I don't know, wires and hay, then that would be like a
Yeah.
reason to start something different. Where like, I feel like what I've done with the squares is like it was a very different thing to my like DJ arc and label work and all this kind of stuff. Obviously, there's overlaps between the two things, but I kind of like that was a nice point to have a refresh. And then if I was doing something new, I'd make it really different to what I'm doing here. So it's not like I'm just saying don't follow me. It's more like I'm taking a different direction. And I think with your work, like, I've obviously seen it around London, and how I've tried to even create work in the same way, like, do billboards and things like this. At first, I never posted them. I was just waiting for someone else to post it and then me repost it. And then that felt like the kind of best feedback loop of like, okay, it has landed with someone in the real world. And, when I help artists, I say to them, do you think about creating something that someone else would want to post? And like how different that wires your brain to, maybe just making a piece of content, for example, and then you post it on Instagram and hoping people share. Like the psychology around what motivates someone else to share it or post it or put it in their feed or put it in their carousel of cool stuff that they make or feel like represents them is very different. And what I've noticed with my project, The Squares, there are certain ones that people maybe like comment and resonate with in some way, but then there are certain ones that appear in people's carousels, and like those ones may not get like high engagement on the the algorithm, Instagram, whatever, but they're the ones that people say to me in the street or something. They'll be like, okay, like imposter syndrome's not a feature, it's a feature, not a bug, and all these ones that they weren't like, what do you call it, high engagement posts, but seem to have resonated on a deeper level.
Yeah, I see so many parallels between, even though on the surface you'd look at our work and say it's completely different, but there's so many parallels. And I think what's interesting about your stuff is like, you don't ever tell people what to think, and how they take your words and paint their own meaning onto it is completely valid. And I love when people do that with paintings. I love when they say, well, to me, this means this. And I'm like, cool, that's not why I made it. But if that's what you take from it, then that's beautiful.
Yeah, because there's so many like kind of instructions and how-tos and all these things. A lot of ideas kind of get competed away really quickly, especially in electronic music and music production and all these kind of things. It's like new sound comes out, and before you even put out the song, the how-to of how to make it is already on YouTube. So
yeah,
I've really tried to avoid that kind of way of framing ideas. So like all of the squares, there's no how to do this or how to do that. Like when I think of ways I could have grown the account, I could have been like, how to be a good artist manager, how to do this, how to do that, and it would have exploded in a bigger way. But to be like, have you thought about this way, and then get 100 different answers feels like the banger. Because I feel like we've all got particular ways of seeing things and doing things. And let's again just expand that, like the scene thing or the idea expanding feels more interesting.
Yes, it's so funny you mentioned about the scene thing. Like, so when I discovered you through Yellow Squares, and then when I researched you, then realized that I knew you from grime. And it's funny that like initially looking at your stuff, didn't think grime at all. And when you said earlier about how the most destructive part of the scene is when everyone's like backbiting each other, and the most positive part of the scene is, and it's so funny that I didn't put two and two together, because it's so strange to see someone in grime, like, or from grime, talking about positivity and like how to do things better and how to be more creative and more curious. These are not themes generally discussed in the grime scene. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. But I guess the visual that I've always had with, if you thought of what grime looks like, it is a bunch of people kind of all collaborating, very live, very boisterous, very hot and heavy. And to an outsider, it does look like chaotic and confrontational. But then to us, when you're in it, it's not. It's like feels like you're just like it's like the atoms bouncing off each other in at high pace. So my experience of that scene is had like a DJ partner. I was going back to back, so there's collaborative there. Then you're working with MC, so there's collaboration there. Then like because of the infrastructure of that scene at the time when I started, you couldn't really do club nights and stuff. And it's like, okay, well, we have to do that. And then the support from the audience was like, we know how difficult it is for you to put on nights. So they'll be super respectful and make sure that everything was safe and kind of everyone protect each other. Again, these are not things that you think of like when you think of the grime scene, but the actual audience was super supportive of people trying to make things happen and risk their money and risk their reputation to make things happen. So any time I guess I get to frame that scene in that way, I do. It's obviously like any other kind of group of people. There's loads of problematic things and things that we could do better, and the things that you learn as a young adult to older adult that I would not do now. But I'm super proud of like that journey of that thing, and even for it to still exist as like a reference point and thing that is still going today, 20 years later. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah, if I think of any sort of subculture that I've been involved in, graffiti, street art, tattooing, even breakdancing, like there are always like the good sides and the bad sides of like every subculture, every community that you get into. But the people who last the longest and the people who I feel like are the happiest, like who like wear that passion for the thing that they love, are always the ones who collaborate. And it's so funny, like, because I guess you just get that energy from other people. And I think teaching as well. I think teaching is a huge thing. It's like there's two street artists who are like internationally well known who I taught to paint, and every time I see a post of theirs like that's success, just it's the most beautiful feeling. And I think I came up with this thing a couple of months ago. I feel like every human is here to either make or caretake, and those are the two most important things. So the caretakers are the ones who are our teachers, our nurses, our parents, like people who look after us and show us the different options that are available and maybe like nurture our journeys. And then the people who make things that enhance our lives. And I think like make or caretake, those are the two things. And if you can combine both, if you can make cool shit, but you can also like help other people with their creations, like that to me is like I've cracked the meaning of life. Like I've finally worked out that's what it's all about.
Yeah, definitely. Like I started out on like Rinse FM, and the owner of Rinse FM is a guy called Genius, an ironic name, but he's like a producer and artist for himself and many people across different generations. And I feel like his production and work alone would make him like a legend. And then it's like he has Rinse, and it's like this other thing that is legendary separately. But people would be like, oh, how did he do both at the same time? But it's, again, I think he's poured his whole kind of make and caretake probably just equally at the same time. It's fascinating. And a lot what you said about collaboration, like two of my most kind of influential artists in this space are like Jamie and Skepta. They're brothers, very different career paths and approaches, but they're like hyper collaborators. Like I think Jamie, it says he's the artist in the UK with the most features. So he's appeared on like the most songs with different artists, and he kind of works with loads of people up and down the, I guess, scale of popularity. And likewise with Skepta, like here and internationally. And I think, okay, they've been so generous with their talent, but it also has, grown, probably developed them as artists and kind of, inspired, thousands or maybe millions of people. Yeah, like me, really. I'm like a kind of byproduct of.
Yeah, that's a credible family. The Adenugas there, isn't it? Like
for sure.
It's just so insane to see like the success in in such different ways by all three of them. It's like, yeah, it's really insane to watch. And I've heard you say before, like that Jamie was like a mentor to you. What are the biggest teachings that you got from him, or was it just like inspiration of just sick? Because like he's just incredible, isn't he? Like just seeing him work, I guess.
Yeah, and like one of the squares is none of my mentors know that my mentor, so he wasn't like directly mentoring. I was just watching what he does and the way he moves in the
Yeah,
world, even just how he lives his life and his kind of philosophies that he was putting down. Not in a kind of, he's not doing them to do it for anyone. He's doing it for himself. And you think, okay, there's something in him, maybe like not taking a record deal. There's something in him working in this unusual way that's comfortable for him. It's something in him saying no to like doing shows abroad or to doing loads of shows. And then when he does them, they're special. And all these like things that I thought were just maybe like counterintuitive. And yeah, again, 20 years later, I went to like one of his first shows in 2005. And then, you know, he's still kind of got this base of people that support his work today. And the confidence that you got to have to basically ignore what everyone is saying to you to a degree. All these different points, people would probably be telling, no, like, no, you're not right, Jamie. Come on, man, you can make loads more money doing this. Do this, wear this shoe, put on this hat. Like, no, we go on Insta. He's never used Instagram, never used TikTok. All these things, like that, people said were the most important thing, and he's just found his own way. And even you know, in the journey of doing this project, it's the same thing. People say, oh, yeah, it would be bigger if you went on TikTok. And I say to people, hey, look, I use X, Twitter, and Instagram. That's like that's more than enough social media for me. If I use one more thing, this whole thing collapses. So it's either I stay here and carry on, or I use TikTok and my brain breaks. I'm not nothing against TikTok, but I can't do another one or start another one. Maybe a different project, maybe a different time in life, but no more. And yes, it could have been bigger, but it would have just broken me and made it like miserable for me. So what do you want? Do you want me to continue just having fun like this, or do you want me to have a little bit more money perhaps and maybe more miserable? What do you want? So I've always like watched the way he's put out music and done things in the world. And again, that generosity is something that was shown to me not just by him, by a lot of these artists, MCs, DJs, producers, writers that just showed me, I guess, an open door, and then me trying to leave that open behind me and be like, okay, just saying stuff that you like. You think this is sick, putting it in our feeds and, you know, promoting it, or saying, oh, I can't do this show, you should book the original or Names Bliss or something like that, you know, that kind of thing, leaving the door open behind.
It's so funny when, as you were talking there, something jumped into my head that I took from Jamie. So you mentioned the record deal thing, not taking a record deal. That was one of the main reasons why I've not worked with any galleries. Like, well, I've had a few things in a few galleries, but for the most part, like if a gallery contacts me, it's like I look at it in the same way as, like, for so many years the record label thing was like, this is the way that you do music and you sign with a record label. And it was the same with art. It's like, oh, you're only an artist if you're showing in galleries. And then as a kid, seeing Jamie not do that, I kind of thought, should I be doing that in my field? And that was why I'm sort of, you don't really find my stuff in galleries, because it's like, how does it benefit me? And I look at most of these galleries and they've got a mailing list, and that's pretty much it. And I've already got my own mailing list. And so if they've got a mailing list that I'm sure is more powerful than mine, then maybe. But then again, it's like, that's a mailing list to people who are interested in art in general. Like, my mailing list is for people who are interested in my art. So the conversion rate is going to be a lot higher. So looking at these established platform or a record label or a gallery, like the institutions in whatever your field is, looking at them and going, is that definitely the route that I have to travel? Because I think in these days, probably not. There probably is a side entrance or a back door that can hack your way into something that's in the end maybe going to make you a lot happier, or able to control your content in a way that's more fulfilling to you.
Exactly. And like, because the gallery is not going to tell you that. It's just, that's not how the thing works. And because of the time that we came up, like all of us, I guess, over the last 20 years, the reshuffling of power has been something that no one could have understood. So the people that I guess it was not even just confident, but suspected there would be change and left themselves adaptable to it, I guess probably benefited the most. So like people that weren't in long-term deals, people that maybe had a few strings to their bow. So it wasn't like, okay, you're just like painting or making music. They I guess explored their talents in all these different ways. I remember like even at the beginning of people doing brand deals in our music, people used to complain about like, oh, like you, and I used to think, okay, this is actually helping us maintain our independence. And a lot of the time when I've worked with companies, these are things that I actually already use, or like things that I would be using anyway. That felt like an empowerment, you know. It is a hand in hand, obviously, thing for brand and yourself, but being able to not even just maintain independence, but have like the validation of, I guess, a larger company, larger institution, without having to sign across my work, and then obviously making some money, and then also being able to continue doing whatever I want to do, saying whatever I want to say, without kind of restrictions. And as I've maybe hit on challenging topics, I see the difference in how people comment publicly versus how they DM me.
Interesting.
Yeah? So I'll talk about, say, like the BBC, for example. And for a lot of people, they see it as not practical to say what they think in a public setting or on, you know, the comments. But they'll DM me, or when they see me in the street, they'll want to speak about it. And I'm like, okay, well, how can we be artists and, you know, try and speak our truth or things that we think are important if we, I guess, you know, we won't say something about this organization or this brand or this thing or this thing. But I think like people don't realize how much when we talk about independence, we're not just talking about giving away our work and we're maybe signing a deal and work with people. We're talking about like the freedom of, you know, our ability to speak our minds and be artists in the more broad sense.
Yeah, I talk to a lot of artists about the brand thing, and it's so interesting because I was cycling the other day, going past all these billboards, and I was like, oh, there's FKA Twigs doing a sneaker advert. I feel like there's a certain level of success where then people will go, okay, it's fine now for you to work for brands. But as soon as you get like the young up and coming people taking a brand deal, then they get all of this bombarded of hate, like, oh, you've sold out and all of these comments. And I'm just like, what do you people want? Like, what is happening here?
Yeah, it's really bizarre. And I guess I don't think I've ever worked with a company that I wouldn't use like their products or they're not adjacent to what I do. So I guess like one of the easy criticisms that I have, or as people have lobbied at me, is that when I work with alcohol companies, which is fair, but I work in the live music space, and it's there in every single space, and it functions with it, and they exist side by side. And when I speak to brands, I'm like, I want them to spend more and contribute more to culture, like not less. And when I put forward good ideas or ideas that I think are good and are going to work, and you know, whatever, promote their brand in a creative way, I'm like, I want that to be an example of things, again, how we can expand that possibility. So one of the things that was active when I was coming up was the Red Bull Music Academy, and a lot of people have bad things to say about that. I'm like, fine, but would our creative space be better with 20 of those from companies that are already in the space? So if you had the Coca-Cola Music Academy, Sprite Music Academy, Hennessy Music Academy, would that be better for what we have compared to what we have today than just having one or none? Actually, we're actually in a space we have none, and maybe things are pretty short term. And now, especially in the age of austerity and this kind of uncertainty with government funding and venues shutting down, I'm like, I think we were too hasty to celebrate, you know, these things stopping. And people don't realize how much, again, on the behind the scenes, a lot of the people that are the caretakers, they need an income too. And they need to live comfortably and be able to commit to being caretakers, and that being like a really important like spine of our artistic community, our society, you know. And like most of the time that I've worked in this space, I've been more behind the scenes than in front of the scenes. And this project has like forced me to like effectively become an artist full time to, I guess, get across some of these points. But if the other side was kind of working for me better, maybe I would have never even been a public facing character. I might have just been a caretaker. So yeah, it's this balance that us having these conversations publicly and being super honest about them, I think is more useful than not.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think everyone should have their own internal gauge of what works for them and what doesn't. And I think obviously the brand is going to have their KPIs, their targets of what they're trying to get out of working with a creative. Like they want something from that relationship, but equally, like there's more in it for you than just the money. Like the money is obviously great because the money then allows you to continue making your creative work. One thing I love is a saying I've said on the show before of like taking bad money and turning it good. So if you get, I know an artist who took a commission from Amazon, and it's just like, yeah, it's Amazon. There's a lot of problems there. But if they are going to filter some of that money into you being able to carry on your creative practice, then there is some positive in that. And I have no judgment in anyone who wants to work with any brand that there is, to if it's going to allow them to keep on going. It's like I've had my public battle with KFC, and I've said I will never work with them. I have never worked with them, but that's just my barrier. It's just this balancing of making sure it's right for you and that it feels good in your soul. And like you said, working with brands that you use their products, that's really something that I'm trying to do now. Is like, yeah, I'll only work with them if they've got something that I think is cool about them. So yeah, it's all a work in progress.
Yeah, and I think, remember that the creative part of this stuff is the things that you say no to too. So what people don't realize, I guess, when we choose to work with different companies, we've also said no to a whole bunch of other opportunities, and saying yes to one also negates you from working with others. So like the companies that I've chosen to work with here and there, it's like that was also a decision not to work with others. So like, yeah, maybe I wouldn't work with KFC because I just don't eat KFC or want to promote fried chicken on my page, right? And it wouldn't be like anything more than that about the brand, you know. But I would work with, I don't know, Nando's, for example, because I just have Nando's, you know. It was just like less, it's just less mental load for me to do that. And yeah, I don't know, we can go back and forth on that forever.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. So you've been a part of music for like 15 plus years, and obviously we've seen it massively change. Like, did you go through any points in that time where it was a real struggle, where you were like considering like giving up, or has it always been like, no, it will always be music?
No, I think there's, I guess, two biting points, just I guess in terms of where you're at in your life and what you want to do next. So I think there was maybe the end of 2013. I was just like unsure of just how long I could commit to doing it without, I guess, some sort of path of making an income enough to like live independently, like not live at home, you know, just live the London life, you know, try and buy a house, start a family, all those kind of things. And then I guess the breakthrough that we had as a scene in 2014 was a whole bunch of new songs and talent coming through. So like people like call it like the German Whip moment. There was like German Whip and That's Not Me and Skepta Breaking and all these like Stormzy coming out, novelists, all these new artists coming through, AJ Tracy. Then eventually just the scene kind of exploded, but it was like a mixture of the scene exploding, but it was actually streaming that kind of opened up the window to effectively that our music was always being listened to and consumed, but it was never being counted. So that was 2014, 2015, 2016 was like, oh, all of these kind of free listens had been counted for the first time. We kind of got a sense of, oh, we do have fans, we do have an audience everywhere. We can sell tickets in every major city in the country. And that being like, oh, we've got the data you needed this whole time. And that kind of run of tunes and shows that we were doing up and down the country, like kept me in for longer. And then I guess in 2020 when everything shut down, so how old was I? I was about 32. And yeah, again, it's like another point in life when you're like, oh, okay, what if things don't come back, or they don't come back in a way that kind of aligns with how you want to live your life today? What would that look like?
And it kind of hasn't, right? Like things are very different, especially like the night scene and people going out and stuff.
Yeah, it's completely different. And I think the first 2 years of everything being open was just to catch up and everyone wanted to go out and all this kind of things. And now the dust has settled and you've seen all these venues closing down. Like I guess the inflation, the cost to deliver a show has gone up probably 50%. And when we used to do a lot of shows abroad, I think this is a good thing, by the way, is that scenes locally have developed in a way that a lot of places that we used to visit regularly don't need to like have international artists, and I think this is a good thing. Not to like completely isolate ourselves, but that local talent is promoted. I mean, I feel that way here too.
Mm.
But again, the expense of, you know, when I was doing, I guess everything pre 2020 was pre Brexit Britain as well. So we could just go everywhere really kind of reasonably cheaply and low admin. And today it's not reasonably cheap and it's high admin. So a lot of things became like kind of unfeasible. And I think like the marketing of our country actually, especially through the rest of Europe, was like kind of negative, you know? And that definitely was a hit for us in terms of opportunities and business and that kind of thing. And I had to, yeah, really think about what the next phase would be. And again, just stumbled on this idea, and it's kind of like returning to what I started out as, really like writing and talking about culture and politics and I guess how it affects our world. And maybe again, this is a really small phase of life. Maybe I'll do this for like two or 3 years and then dive into another project. So it is still music adjacent, but yeah, but it's constantly moving.
I love that attitude of not being too tied to it. And when I started doing my pink artwork, I thought, this is something I'm really interested in and I'm going to explore it. And I thought I'd probably be doing it for about 6 months. And I was quite excited to move on to the next thing, because I was like, I'll explore pink, and then I'm going to try like neon yellow, then I'm going to try neon green. And then probably what will happen during that like 6 month to a year period is like, I'll start to like merge the colors together. And I had this whole like plan in my head. And then I got so like obsessed with pink and realized, now I've been doing the work for, this is my 5th year of making work with neon pink, and realizing that I still learn new stuff about this pigment. I still have new ideas to explore, but I was never chained to it. I was never like, okay, this is it. You're pink now, and that's all the work you're going to make is pink from now on. It's like, as soon as it's not exciting and interesting to me, then I will move on. I will have to move on. It's very easy to get like stuck in something that works. And I really want to make sure that doesn't happen to me, because I know the boredom and frustration that will come from just like churning out the same stuff, you know?
Yeah, I guess our similarities here is having like some sort of creative restriction actually allows you to do great work too. So like you're not having to negotiate with yourself every day. Oh, what should I do? Like I have like maybe like this 2-color thing, and it helps me like just flow out. Like sometimes I can literally just roll out of bed and these just things just flow out of me, and I'm like, oh, maybe I was thinking about this before. I slept on this, and this inspired me. Whereas if I had to like every day, like, oh, what color should I use, or what pen should, like, that would slow me down so much. And I think like imagine in this work that you've created and creating over the last 5 years, the next things and the future projects are already embedded in this work too. So you'll be like, oh, this is something I learned from pink that would apply to this color or to this idea that I would have never discovered if I didn't go that deep down on the pink thing, you know?
100%.
And that is like, so when sometimes I say to people, oh, you need to just keep going on this thing, even if it's not getting like some sort of a reaction. It's like, because you haven't found the biting point yet.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. And I say this all the time. Like, I had a video blow up recently, and so my DMs are pretty flooded at the moment, and I would say a good percentage of those DMs are young artists going like, what should I do? And it's really just the same advice to every single person. And I do much prefer it on Instagram, because then I can voice note people, and it's so much quicker than writing out like a whole essay when people email me. But like, it's so simple of like, you just keep making, because even if the thing that you're making now is rubbish, what you learn from the making of it, and what you learn about yourself, and what you learn about what you like and what you don't like, and what you learn about what worked and what didn't work, that's everything that will take you on to the next thing. So if you just quit the thing that you don't like now and just stop, then nothing else can come, because it only comes from making in the first place. So it's like, it sounds so simple, doesn't it? Because like, both of us have had like very varied ups and downs like of a creative career, but the consistent thing is like we just kept doing it, and so have seen success. And it's that one thing that if I could take my brain out and like put it into all of these kids who are trying to make it, it would just be like, yeah, just keep making stuff, because that's what leads to everything.
Exactly.
And when you look at what you're making now, there's just this blueprint of everything that you've done, even if it was a different discipline, even if it was a different skill. And like the stuff you learnt in music will become part of your art, and the stuff that you learn in your art will then filter back into your music. And then when you're on stage speaking about something, like some idea will come to you, and it's like everything is just a tapestry of your lived experience. And so just go and live, go and make stuff, go and do stuff, because that will inform everything else.
Exactly. Like I'll give you an example like this. In 2013, I was in a comic shop with my friend Ralty in New York, and we looked at some of them and they had blank covers so you could draw your own. And I was like, oh, one day I'll do this for like a record. And this is obviously just parked the idea. It never happened. And I actually tweeted it one day when, I released an album on Butters, the label that I ran. I'll just make it blank covered and you can draw the covers yourself. And then I didn't do that. I did like an album where I had a blank cover, and then everyone ordered one. I drew them a cover. So it was like, that was 10 years prior to even me starting the squares, So it's like this thing that would just sat in my brain for all this time. And then I actually did it without thinking about the idea. And then I realized once I'd put out the album, sent them all out, I was like, oh yeah, like, do you remember when we had this conversation about this thing? And I had the comic still, it was like a white cover Spider-Man comic. And then I found the tweet of like, oh, I did this like literally 11 years later. This is insane. But without even realizing it. So there's all these things that are in our, I guess, our subconscious, or like you said, from lived experience, and maybe things that we don't even, we realize we're taking in the time. And I guess the serendipity of like even doing the notes in the way I did it, I had no idea like where this was all going. But again, if I just stopped at idea number 10 or did a red square or did orange square, it would never have got there.
Yeah, it's so true. Are you thinking of doing anything with the books? Is there anything that could like be added, or post-it notes, or like something that could come with the book?
Yeah, so in there's space to draw your own squares, and then a bunch of the people that pre-ordered, like, I did so many like kind of custom squares in it. So, and anyone
Amazing.
that I see like in real life, I guess, that has the book, then I'll just draw in it. So this is like not really like a kind of traditional coffee table book. It's something that I want people to scribble in and kind of use as a bit of a notepad, and just again, be playful with, like, use it like a comment section or whatever thing that makes sense to you, or like cut pages out, it being like an active piece of work rather than, like I said, something to just look at.
What will be really fun for you once the book's out is seeing the innovative ways that people will use it that you haven't expected, because that's what happened when I opened up my Painting a Stranger's thing, is like seeing the innovative ways that people use this just an upload form to send me their images, like, that I hadn't expected. Like, I thought people would just send in selfies of themselves, but like sending in pictures of loved ones who are not here anymore. And then me going and painting them in the streets, and it becomes a memorial mural. And it's just, I had an idea of like, here's a thing for you to use, and I expect you to use it this way. But then people are creative and they come up with all of these different ways. It's going to be so beautiful seeing your book and just going, do you know what? I never thought of doing that, but I'm so glad that you did.
Exactly. So in my head, I've got probably space to do like a V2 of the things that came out of the thing, like the ideas that created the ideas. We'll see how it's done, and it's sold really well so far. So I guess there could be 1,000 ideas of how people have interacted with it, and it would be nice to capture those in a meaningful way too. So we'll see.
That's amazing. Also, this podcast does sell a lot of books, so that's one thing. That's one thing. The listeners to this show, we love you guys so much, because one thing that you are is really supportive of every time we've had an author on. We have noticed when the episode comes out that they're like, Amazon book sales go up and stuff like that. So I used one of your tunes on one of my Instagram posts, and it was the song about working hard, and that song sets my brain on fire because it's so fast, and you drop a bar and then I'm like, let's talk about that, and then you're on to the next thing and I'm like, oh shit. But like there's so much in that song. But I think your thoughts around work are really interesting. The song opens with people say that hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard, but that's not true. Could you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, so I think people that are listening to this and usually engaging with what I do seriously, they're already working hard. So that isn't going to be just the difference alone. So we've already got some sort of baseline. Oh, we're already working hard. We already have talent. Okay, what is going to be that thing that breaks through to the next level? If you're just taking those two out of that being a part of the equation, and then it's like, oh, it's like using the platform in an unusual way. It's like, flipping something on its head. It's not just grunt work, you know what I mean? Or just, I was at the the easel for 10 hours a day. It's like, yeah, that's what we do, or we're in the studio 10 hours a day. It's like, yeah,
you're
we know.
supposed to.
Yeah. But it's like, I guess where I was leaning things on as well is that our industry or like our kind of ecosystem has, for lack of a better term, like a high failure rate, right? So there's a reason why, say, there is a kind of like a top 1% of not just earners, but like visibility, all of the things. And that's not because they worked 11 hours and you worked 10. So let's throw this out and maybe analyze these other things. Why?
Yeah, and it's so true. And it can be a really scary place to be when you're making something different, because I mean, I've been a very open book about painting in pink and how I was terrified to do it in the beginning because no one else was doing it. But that's the very reason why it became successful. And I think if your ideas are not being done, that can make you feel like they might be bad ideas. But if you just go and do the same ideas that everyone else is doing, the chances of you succeeding doing something very similar is going to be very, very difficult. So it is that differentiation of, and I've seen, it's funny how stuff that we've said on this podcast for years, like, has been the topic of conversation very recently on TikTok. I've seen so many times, like, for so many years we talked on how like you're delusional until you start to make it, and now every creator I see on TikTok is making this same video of you're delusional until you make it. And I mean, the point is still valid, but like there's a shelf life for an idea, and Rick Rubin spoke about this in his book about how there is a time for an idea, and if you don't act on that idea, you'll all of a sudden notice that someone else has done it, because that was the time for this idea to be realized. So if you are sitting on something and you're not sure whether it's a good idea, it might not be a good idea. It might not be, but you've still got to try it. And again, that goes back to what we were talking earlier about just keep making stuff, because even if you're making bad art, if you're making bad ideas, they are going to form the foundation of, like, your next ideas will spring from those ideas.
100%. The Rick Rubin thing of the idea being in other places, you must have seen things that you think, oh, like I thought of that. I was like swirling around in my head.
One of my favorite squares that you've ever written is, you said, nothing I share should distract you from the pure joy of creating. Could you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. Some people look at what I'm doing as some sort of advice page. I'm like, okay, there's a time when all of these things are not going to help you. The Rick Rubin book's not going to help you. Podcast's not going to help you. I can't help you. It's just like, just go and make and just enjoy and forget all of this stuff. Like no stream count is gonna make you feel better. Just apart from that thing in that particular moment, that it might be the height of your enjoyment of the whole process of making this work and making this all happen. And especially when I speak to like a lot of DIY artists at any age, they think of the success of the thing being the reaction to it. And like old school Prince saying, it's a success upon creation rather than it being the validation. And it's like really hard to learn that. And it's something that I'm taking time with myself. Like most of the work I do or like the ideas I have, I don't share. And it's still feeling like the same level of dopamine as when I put it on the internet. That's like, I'm still learning that bit of the creative journey. Like I'm very young in that sense. like the 80 or 90% not sharing, just making and enjoying and fumbling around, and then like a very small bit sharing with the world, you know, like re-establishing that balance and that validation part.
I want everyone who's listening to this to really take that in. Like, your art is more than a post on social media. Like, and for me being a visual artist, like, I know there's certain things I can post that will do well for the algorithms, but like, what matters is what fulfills you. And that's something that can get lost, I think. And it's something that we need to make sure is at the core of what we make, is the joy, because that's like such a specific word, the joy of creating is so important, and we can't lose it.
100%.
Boom, dude. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Close the app, Make the Ting is the book. It's out now, and just let's do a part 2 at some point if you're down. I've just loved chatting to you.
Thank you for having me.
And where can everyone find you?
So my socials are Elijah, so ELI, but then a 1 instead of a J, number 1, and then AH on Instagram and X, if anyone's still there.
Amazing. Thank you, dude.
Thank you.
Do you know someone who would benefit from listening to this episode? If you do, share it with them. This podcast literally wouldn't exist if it weren't for the paid subscribers over at creativerebels.substack.com and for the team at Joy Collective.